Hey everyone, meteorologist Rob Carlmark here with a very important story for the date. 8 years ago, there was a very destructive and unfortunately deadly tornado that moved through the community of Joplin, Missouri. And this severe weather pattern was well forecast, but what actually happened really surprised even hardened meteorologists that were looking at these storms, and storm chasers that responded to the scene used the terms over and over again. It looked like a war zone because literally the aftermath of what happened in Joplin, Missouri, through a good portion of that community resembled literally a war zone. Structures completely wiped away. There were many people that were injured, and unfortunately there were many deaths. And if you are new to this YouTube channel, we cover breaking news events, we cover different topics, all encompassing news. But today's a serious topic because we are going to talk to today is someone that not only was in Joplin, Missouri, but somebody who lived through that very deadly tornado. So I want to introduce to you, we are talking to him via Skype. His name is Alan Matthews, and he was working at KMTR, or he's now working at KMTR in Eugene, Oregon, which is where we're speaking to him today. But at the time, he was a meteorologist doing weather in Joplin, Missouri, and was personally affected by this storm. So Alan, nice to talk to you. Why don't you just take me back to that day? You know, as a meteorologist, these things never really occurred totally out of the blue. You must have had some warning. So take me through maybe a couple days before the actual day of the tornado.
Well, now I don't know how familiar you are with the way the weather works in the Midwest, but a lot of times when we think we're going to have a severe weather event, the National Weather Service will actually put out a conference call. So it could happen the day before, it could happen a couple days before. And basically what we end up going through is we talk about how the conditions are, how things are shaping up, what it looks like, the possibilities of tornadoes. But, you know, if you ever watch, Weather Channel, you watch, the Midwest when they're going through these storm activities, you notice that those watches can cover a pretty vast area. So while the forecasting skills have gotten better, I mean, there still is, it is still difficult to pinpoint exactly where these tornadoes are going to happen. So while you have an idea that the conditions are going to be right for this to happen, again, pinpointing the exact times, the locations, that's just something that's really difficult to do.
So you start to have these discussions early. Everyone's on board about the tone, about how you want to talk about the possibility of tornadoes. You're going to give people a rough location. I do this as well. Tell me about the strategy of trying to communicate what is coming to people, what may be coming to people's neighborhood with all the noise of their daily lives. What do you do to try and really connect with people to make sure that they know what's coming?
Well, I mean, the basic idea is just to get that information out there. Obviously, we take that the weather very seriously in the Midwest, especially when we have situations like this. In fact, I believe today they're also dealing with the risk of potential tornadoes as well. So it's just basically trying to use as much of the information as you can to get it out there, reiterate it. Obviously, social media has been a big part of that as well, because you have people that are out there that can also, show you what the conditions are like out there. You're relying on National Weather Service, you're relying on radars, you're relying on all the forecasting, abilities you have at your fingertips.
So take me to the morning and then the afternoon of May 22nd, 8 years ago. Did you see something unusual? Did you have a gut feeling? I mean, you had been doing this for a long time up to that point. What were your thoughts just before you really started to see things come together?
Well, and actually the funny thing about that is that happened on a Sunday, so that was my day off. So I actually wasn't working that day. So we had a sense that, there was going to be a severe weather situation. But like I said, the whole area under a tornado watch. But you could sense the sirens had actually gone off while I was at home. And it's kind of hard to describe how that day kind of unfolded because the sky started getting a little bit, kind of got a weird greenish tint to them later in the afternoon. And then, like I said, the sirens went off probably about 20 minutes before that tornado really got into the Joplin area.
And at that moment, people I think don't realize that even a really large tornado, which the Joplin tornado was, it ranked as an EF5, as strong as it gets. They estimate maybe half a mile to 3/4 mile wide, which is really wide. But in the grand scheme of things, as you're talking about the whole area, but now we've got something coming together, and you're at home. Take me through the moments up to when the tornado actually hit your house, which is, by the way, the images that we are looking at right now on our screen.
Well, and to give you a really even more idea of it, because you're talking about how wide it was, 3/4 of a mile. I think I read reports it was up to a mile. Not only was this tornado big, but it was also very slow moving, and it was on the ground for a long period of time. It was on the ground for several miles. I mean, you're not talking, a small community here. Joplin is a town of 50,000 people, and I mean, that tornado cut right through the middle of town. And in the neighborhood that I live in, that's at the point when it was at an EF5. And we took cover when we actually heard the tornado. And it was just this loud grinding sound. I kind of describe it like a garbage disposal. It kind of had that grinding noise to it. And we took cover. What you want to do usually is you want to either get into a basement or, and in this area with the rocky ground, a lot of homes didn't have basements. So you basically try to get to the most inner room in your house. You try to separate yourself from the outside with as many walls as you possibly can. So one of the shots that I sent you was a shot of the bathroom that we actually took cover in during the storm. You can see the bathtub there, but you see a whole bunch of debris surrounding that. And that's where we basically took cover and rode out the storm. Like I said, we heard the sound of the tornado, just that grinding noise. And then all of a sudden you hear the destruction of the house. Right. I've never heard glass pop before, but that's what it sounded like. It wasn't shattering. It was just the glass, the windows were popping. And then the next thing you know, the roof is gone. And you're just wondering, my wife and I really had two different death scenarios here. It's like I thought we were going to get thrown from the house, and she thought that we were going to die because we were going to have debris rain on us. And again, you look at the shot of the bathtub, and I mean, you just see everything that's surrounding us. In fact, that beam that's right by the bathtub, that was actually just above my head.
Did you have almost an out-of-body experience? Because, I'm sure you had been on TV during tornado warnings, giving the same advice that now you were following yourself. And did you have a moment when you thought, I don't know if this is going to be enough to survive this thing? Being actually in a bathtub thinking, this may save my life at this moment. Did you have an experience like that? Just take me through that moment when you're just hunkered down in the bathtub and you know it's coming.
Well, I mean, the time that we took cover and the time that the tornado hit, there wasn't a whole lot of time in there. So it's just one of those things, like I said, I mean, you could hear the destruction happening around you. And then when the roof was gone, it's just like, okay, are we going to survive this? And I think as large as this tornado was, there was actually a little bit of a calm. I think it was the eye. And then we had another round of it. And it's just one of those things that it just felt like it was an eternity.
So the storm passes. You've got clear sky above your head. There's no more roof.
Right.
Did you realize that you survived the storm, or did you think maybe something else happened?
Well, I mean, right after the storm, because a lot of times after tornadoes, you get pelted with hail. So there was a lot of hail after that, and we're trying to take cover from that as well. And part of the house still actually had ceiling. It didn't have roof anymore, but there were still a couple spots that we could take cover, with a ceiling. But after, we had the northwest of our house, which you can see from one of the photos that I sent, which was the back of our house, there was absolutely no walls left. And you could just basically looking out, you see what had happened to the neighborhood. I mean, it was just, as far as the eye could see, it was just nothing but destruction and devastation. Plus the fact that you also heard the sound of gas, because obviously gas lines, were broken, or, you had gas appliances that were ripped out of the wall. So you had gas lines that were also leaking. So you could hear that hissing sound amongst all that destruction as well. Now,
Alan, as we're looking at these images, we're just getting to know you. But in our lives, you're a stranger to us. But to your house and to the houses that were flattened all around you, those are people that you wave to as you're heading off to work. There may be someone you can run over to their house and borrow a cup of sugar if you're baking something. I mean, these are your neighbors. So
Right.
did you have an immediate sense that you survived, but to go check on them? And did you do that? And I hate even asking this, but what did you find in your neighborhood?
Well, the good thing for us is everybody in our cul-de-sac did survive the storm. In fact, actually, most of us met like right after the storm happened because there's that big question of, okay, now what? I mean, because obviously, with all this destruction, cell phone towers, are damaged. They're, trying to contact other people to find out what had actually happened was really tough to do. So luckily, like I said, most of us were able to gather. I believe that there was somebody just outside of our cul-de-sac that did die as a result of the hurricane or of the tornado. But basically, those of us that were in the neighborhood just basically gathered together, and there was a park down the street that we had heard that's where people were gathering, and then we tried to find somebody that was outside of the tornado zone to basically come in and rescue us and take us someplace that was safe.
And your job is a little bit different than a lot of people's job, because you, working in news, realize that you also, especially in weather on that day and in the aftermath, that you have to go back to work. So take me
Right.
to those moments. You're safe, your neighbors are safe. What happens next, and how do you go from what the horror that you experienced and the trauma in your own life to then somehow trying to compartmentalize that and then go back to work because you're the trusted face and the name that people are looking to you to. They want to know what happened and what's going to happen next with the weather.
Well, and it's funny that you asked that because that actually was the first place that my wife and myself went. Is that we had a carrier with our dogs in it, and we wound up back at the TV station. We went back to KODE, and the positive on that is by the time we got there it was probably 8 or 9 o'clock that evening, and the positive there was the fact that was kind of information central. So that way we were getting ideas of what was happening, what areas were safe, what had actually happened in the area. Obviously, there were some things that we had to take care of because we really had, no supplies. I didn't actually go back to work the next morning because I did the morning show. And I mean, by the time I tried to get to sleep, it was about the time that I should be getting up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a little frazzled for that Monday. So I didn't actually get back to work until Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
But we actually stayed at the station, and it was, I did the show basically in sweats because that was really all I had as far as clothing, because basically we just got out of there with, what we were wearing, and we were able to make a trip to the store that night actually to pick up, a couple things that we might need. But as far as clean clothes, didn't really have a lot of those. So I got back on Tuesday, and I mean, it was tough because a lot of people, were hurting. This was a devastating situation, and just trying to talk through it. I had people tell me that was probably some of the most honest broadcasting they had seen, just because I just let it all out there. It's like, this is what happened. This is what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people in the same way. What happened here, and let's try to make sense of this, and let's move forward. And a lot's going to be happening over the next couple of weeks, months, even years.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough.
And Alan, in your experience, working in news and in the industry, something will happen. If it's a big story like what you went through, the national media will come in and cover it for a day or two, maybe 3, and then they're gone, and people's interest is gone. So can you tell us, since you were there, what was it like recovering from that storm in the days and the weeks and even the years afterward? What was it like to come back from that?
It was tough. I mean, you mentioned the national media there, and I think they were there a little longer just because of the severity of the storm and how many people actually perished in that situation. And I think that the positive of it all was that you got to see a community come together. We had a lot of people come in from the outside to help us, and a lot of these organizations stayed there for a long period of time to help people out because, again, this was a large area of town that got hit by this. I mean, one of our hospitals was destroyed as a result of this. Schools were destroyed as a result of this. I mean, people, not only losing homes, businesses were destroyed. So you had, an economy that was also harmed by this. So this was something that wasn't just going to rectify itself in a matter of a couple of weeks, a couple months. Like I said, you had organizations there that were staying there helping people. through the long term. And I mean, it took us a while before we actually, got back on our feet, found a place to live. So and I'm sure people still are still, they're still working on the community there. Unfortunately, we left there about 4 years ago, so I
Mhm.
really can't speak for how the community is now. But I mean, there was still, the rebuilding process, even at that point in 2015.
And Alan, I just want to ask you one last question here. There's always the next big tornado, and when meteorologists get on TV and they interrupt shows or they basically intrude themselves into people's personal lives to tell them something is on the way, there's a lot of backlash if it doesn't come together exactly the way that we think it will, or it doesn't affect them personally. Is there one big takeaway, since you went through this, since you are a surviving victim, that you want people to know when they start hearing about severe weather, people cut into their program, that they should know through your experience why this matters?
Well, and it's kind of, again, ironic that you mentioned that, because when I was online earlier today, somebody actually had posted the fact that there was a
Mm-hmm.
viewer who was relatively upset because of a show that got interrupted because of it. And this is something you have to take seriously because of the fact that lives are at stake.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be something that hits your immediate area, but it could hit, someone that a loved one that isn't that far from you. I mean, and that's the thing about the Joplin tornado, because it's not like the first tornado that we've had in that area. I mean, obviously, it's the most destructive one, but a couple years prior to that, we had another city, Pierce City, that had some, destruction there. Carl Junction was another city that also had dealt with some, tornadic activity and damage. So, I mean, these are things that, if you live in the Midwest, it is a reality. It's something you have to live with, and it is something that you have to take with the severity when those warnings are out there. I mean, I think Moore, Oklahoma is a good example of that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they've been hit by tornadoes, a couple times.
Right. And they were in the path of potential, the same kind of thing happening again just a few days ago. So, Alan, we thank you for talking to us. And also, if you're watching this from California, the reason why we're talking about tornadoes in California is we actually do get tornadoes in California. In fact, we get tornadoes right here at home. A few years ago, we had a strong tornado go through Elk Grove. We've had a tornado go through a portion of Roseville, and we average about 4 in the state, including right here in the Central Valley, especially the northern section, which we happen to live in. So, Alan Matthews, thank you so much for talking to us. Enjoy your day in Eugene, Oregon. And we appreciate you telling your story. I know it's tough to go back to that moment, but maybe with this conversation, we can save a life in the future.
Well, I appreciate it, Rob. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.